What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Community Farm Alliance podcast. I'm your host for the Blackberry series. My name is Vaughn Barnes, and I have with me today Tonya Smith out of Barren County, Kentucky. Tonya is one of the farmers that owns Smith's Family Farms. Tonya, tell me more about the farm.
The location in here in Park City is about 200 acres. It originally was a dairy farm. We raised tobacco, we raised soybeans, all kinds of different stuff that people raise on a farm. And then about 10 years ago, I made a transition from dairy after my father retired from dairy farming, which was a little bit more, I guess it was about 15 years ago. Because at that time, 15 years ago, he had started putting it in land preservation. It's a conservation program through NRCS. And so a portion of the land was in conservation, a portion of the land was just barren. So I decided to put a grape vineyard on it and came up with the idea of Gateway Vineyard. Even in the Cave City location we have where the farm is. And here it means that in Barren County has the largest number of Black farmers in the state. They
Really?
have like 2,000 acres. Yeah. Well, as far as acreage goes, over 2,000 acres of farmland, but it's not being used. And the reason being because most young adults in this area didn't want to get into farming. I didn't want to get into farming. If we were out in the field one day, I was looking for a way out of the field. So a lot of young adults went on to college and they didn't come back to work the land. So Therefore, you have a lot of land in Barren County that's not being utilized, that is owned by Black farmers. And it also goes for Christian County. They're second and third in the top three for acreage for Black farmers.
What counties again?
Christian County and Hart County.
With the farm that you guys had, and you said your father was running that farm, how many cows did he have up to one time?
Oh gosh, I think 150 at one time, maybe a little bit more. And also we did dairy at the Cave City location. So it could have been close to a little over 200 cows if we did it combined. But then later on, we switched at the Cave City location, we switched from dairy to cattle. Then after my grandfather died, we sold most of the livestock and just stuck to this location here in Park City and did dairy, tobacco. And then a few years later, my dad stopped doing dairy farming and went into land conservation.
So what is land conservation like for you now? I know we've talked off camera about, not farming the land, but getting paid to not farm. Explain that a little bit, because that was kind of confusing during the phone conversations.
Well, it's a program that Reagan started in the 80s, and it's a conservation reserve program. And all it is you're pretty much getting the land back to a healthy state. To explain it simply, it's that you come in, NRCS provides native grasses, which is natural to Kentucky, and you don't utilize that land. You just let it do its natural thing, let it rejuvenate, the soil rejuvenate. Wildlife, starts to come back into the land. We see more deers now, more birds that we didn't see before. Just the ecosystem works as it should when you participate in land conservation. That is more of a natural setting and a connection.
So during the time of the farm, you would say you wouldn't have as many deer on the property, wouldn't be as many, birds around.
Right, because you don't realize how much you disturb the land when you're doing agriculture, which is nothing wrong with it, because people need it to survive. But with that being said, a lot of its the soil's natural nutrients gets lost. A lot of natural wildlife gets lost. And pretty much, there is some sort of disturbance in the ecosystem itself. If you take as far as like trees, right? Well, anytime there's a disturbance to that, you're going to have some kind of a situation within the ecosystem where it's a little bit off. And so therefore, that's the reason they started land conservation in order to restore the soil, restore the natural environment back to a healthy setting.
Do you know about when the farm started and when you guys started everything down there in Barren County?
Yeah. So my family has been in the farming for over 50 years, but this area here is 78. And at that time, there was a predominantly white area, to be honest. He didn't get a lot of help from farmers in the area. There were a few that would help him, but to be honest, he didn't. He had to do a lot of it independently. And I think that's where me and my brothers get a lot of our resilience and perseverance to not take no, to keep striving. Even if we get at a local level, we'll take it to state. And if we don't get the answer we want at state, we'll take it even further. And that's just because of seeing his perseverance and my grandfather's in order to get the land that they wanted and to do the things that they've established.
What are some of the things that you have had to go outside of, county level to state level and federal level for with your farm? Is that something that you can talk about?
At one time, there was a bank issue, and I know a lot of Black farmers have bank issues. That's recent. It's such a great need to keep all your records, because if you keep all your records, you can truly find the discrepancy. So there was an issue with one of the banks. So what I did was I had hired an attorney, and a lot of times people don't realize that attorneys is working for the same company. All of them work for the banks, the big companies in a small town setting. And there's really a conflict of interest whenever you hire an attorney to represent you in a bank case if you're in a local town. So the attorney they had, he barely did his job. The bank, he wasn't getting the answers that he wanted from the bank. So therefore, he was excellent at keeping his track records, keeping all his paperwork. So I went through all his paperwork, found out all discrepancies, outlined the discrepancies. But I first gave the bank a warning. If they do not contact us, I will take further action. I contacted the FDIC. Within 7 days, the bank contacted us, released us from anything that they said we owed, but we didn't. And here we are today.
Oh man, so basically they was trying to repossess the land or something like that. And
it wasn't even a repossessing the land. What had happened years ago, it's probably happened to many farmers. They may have gotten a write-off by the bank. But what the bank does sometimes is just have that write-off sitting there as money you owed, but you don't. It's a write-off. And so a lot of Black farmers may, that's how they may have gotten their land stolen. They may have been manipulated into thinking they owed that money, but they didn't, or they paid them the money. And if you have all your documentations in order year by year, I don't care if you keep it in a box or something, just keep your records. And therefore you can go back and see the discrepancies, have the contracts in hand and take it like I did to the FDIC or whomever you need to in order to get your situation resolved.
That makes a lot of sense, man. And that sounds like it was pretty dangerous for you and the bank, where you could have lost something, but because of your record keeping, you were able to keep it intact. And it
wasn't so much of losing something. A lot of times it's like you're held hostage. It's not that you're about to. Let's say some farmers, they may just owe, I'm just going to throw a small number out there. Let's say it's just $10,000 left, right? And that $10,000 was probably a write-off. So they may just keep a current interest where a farmer keeps paying in, but the whole time he could have walked away free, not owing any money, but just didn't know. And the bank kept telling him, oh, you owe this money here, you owe this money here. And he's held hostage. It's not that he's going to lose his land or anything. It's just that he's manipulated by a system.
Kentucky Double Dollars, a program of Community Farm Alliance supporting Kentucky farmers and families with over $300,000 in nutrition benefits matched in 2021. For more information or to find a location near you, visit www.kentuckydoubledollars.org.
So before we left, you were talking about how you had really good record keeping and was able to navigate a bank situation. What are you doing with the property now?
Well, right now, my biggest thing is a sustainable outreach for Black farmers, because I think that's one of the biggest things that they need in Kentucky. A place where, because so conditioned to go to white farm, and when they go to white farm agencies, and I'm not degrading it or anything, but I'm saying when you go to white farm agencies, a lot of times some Black farmers may feel intimidated. The intimidation's there, because they may see another farmer have this and they don't know the right questions to access that information. And to me, I think that more Black farm outreaches need to be in Kentucky and maybe have them in each county. So that's what I'm doing here at this location, is starting a flagship for sustainable farm outreach for people of color. And that's where they can go somewhere and not feel intimidated, and somebody can guide them through the steps of where resources, how to access resources, different agriculture programs, and different grants that are out there for Black farmers. Because a lot of times when a person of color does go into these agencies, they may feel intimidated. They may not know the right questions to ask and the right information. And so I've met Black farmers recently who, they've been surrounded by all types of different agencies, surrounded by farmers, and don't know where to go to get a farm parcel number. Don't know where to go to get, sign up for resources or grants. And I think that's where, as a whole, we've dropped the ball, because how are you engaged in this group and still not know where to go? If that makes any sense to you, like if you're surrounded by 20 farmers a day, different agencies are calling you each month, and you're engaged in all this agriculture, and still you don't know which steps you don't know which steps to take for you to get to a different level within your agricultural needs. And that's the reason I think there should be more sustainable outreach farms in Kentucky that are run by people of color, in order to have that comfortable setting. And also it establishes a program to where somebody of color can come to them and say, okay, what do I need to do? And that person can give them a list to start off, or printed out list. You need your farm number. You need this. You may run into these obstacles. And if you do run into these obstacles, this is your next step. You may need to take it to a state level. You may need to take it to a national level. But the main thing is, don't give up. I'm here to walk you through it.
Look at you, the savior. Now, but seriously, it is something that I could say, speaking on the behalf of somebody that, was able to receive some help from you. Thank you. And thank you on behalf of everybody else that's going to receive.
You're welcome. Because, I feel like a lot of times, we get caught up in our own thing. We don't look out for another person, because we've been doing this for years, right? We always did it independently. But once I received access,
right,
to be able to help others, I want to utilize that in order for people like you or someone else.
Right. That makes complete sense. So that being said, I want to ask now about the property. What are you doing on the property? How are you building the property up? What's the next move with the vineyard?
Okay, well, that's part of, like I said, the sustainable farm outreach. Cause on this farm, I'm putting in a hydroponic system, because I know down the line, that's what's coming to with the USDA. They're looking for farms to do research in innovative agriculture. And in order to keep underserved farmers in the game, I need to implement that system within the farm. So if a farmer comes here, they know about hydroponics. Also, I'm doing aquaculture. So they'll have that access to that information, to where, you can use the livestock, the fish livestock, to sell independently to bigger companies. You can also sell it on your farm. You can also sell it at markets each week. And that's one area I've noticed, that in the farmers market, in this area, and I don't know how it is in larger cities, within Kentucky, is if, people utilize aquaculture in their sales. And another thing we're doing here is permaculture. And so if you're a farmer, and what permaculture is changing the landscape to a design that's comfortable for you to grow your crops. Because you may not be a farmer that wants to grow long rows, to grow something that's comfortable for you. So those are the three main aspects of the sustainable farm, and also the grape vineyard. If anyone wants to go into that area, how can they utilize grapes to make wines, to make it's like a cider beer, but you can also make beer from the wine. You can make a bourbon from the wine. There's so many different aspects of it.
I actually, and shameless plug to homeboy of mine, he has a gourmet grape company. And I need to make sure, shout out to Lionel, but I gotta get you in contact with Lionel, because
please do.
He's going to need grapes. He's going to need a lot of grapes for sure. But outside of that, with the vineyard and the aquaculture, what was that NFCS thing that you were talking about where you didn't farm the land, but you got paid to not do that? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that is, like I said, the Conservation Resource Program, had to think of the name. And so NRCS has several different programs, and I also wrote them down here just in case I forgot. It's CRP program. Right. They also have a Clear 30. They have the State Acres Wildlife Enrichment, and they also have the Farm Life Wetlands. And what those is they sign a contract with you for X amount of years, and they pay you, like I said, not to work the land, to keep it in its natural habitat, which is CRP. Clear 30 is the same way. The State Wildlife Enrichment Program, that's where you get paid in order to set up an area of your farm in order for wildlife, because let's say wild turkeys, deers, to repopulate wildlife in that area.
But not hunt them? You couldn't hunt the same population that you're trying to cultivate?
Well, you know what? That is you technically, you can.
Because I'm like, man, I could only imagine you're the farm right next to the row cropper that's doing corn, but you're cultivating the deer that go over there and eat off all the corn.
That's true. That is true. You do run into that.
Farmers markets support program services. Did you know that a program like this exists in the state of Kentucky? If your market has been around for a while, or maybe you are a new and existing market, we offer marketing development. We also offer business development. We want to offer programs as such, like capital support, to support your market managers. There's a cost share program. We can establish your market with the SNAP EBT program. And lastly, we provide networking. For more information, please contact us at cfaky.org/FMSP. Again, that is cfaky.org/FMSP.
Like I said, we have the grapes, and we have this sustainable outreach going on. And also I have a tour in Lexington, Kentucky coming up, free of charge. Food is
provided. Whoa. Bring that back. You said it's free?
Free and free food.
Okay. Free and free food. Everybody, you heard that? Free and free food. What is the date and where do we sign up?
You have to register at Eventbrite, just so I'll have it, because it's limited space. But there'll be a tour of food chain, and I want farmers to come out there to see how they utilize hydroponics and aquaponics in an indoor setting. And that's another example of innovation, where innovative farming to what it's coming down to in the future. And also there will be a tour at the University of Kentucky South Farm, and we'll discuss, we'll get to tour the farm and also see conventional and organic farming and what types of research they do at the University of Kentucky. And also Sonia Keith from NRCS will be there to discuss what programs NRCS actually offers in Kentucky for urban and small rural farmers, and discuss the different programs, the different resources.
I will make sure that I'm there. That sounds like something I want to be a part of, because I have a lot of questions about the aquaculture that you brought up, and I think that is something that I could do in my backyard.
Yeah.
Now, you've posted on your Instagram, for everybody that doesn't know, I and Tonya have met via Instagram. You posted something on your Instagram where you're digging this humongous pond. What was that like?
Well, basically it's just another way for me to, like I said, my outreach, to show Black farmers that, they have a variety of options. And so that's the reason I try to utilize this land in order to have everything for them at access, at hands, reached for them to be educated in. So like at aquaculture, it was a time-consuming process, because we've talked about it for the past 2 years. It's just deciding, what type of species we wanted in the pond, and if we wanted to take portion of that land out of the conservation program. But overall, I think we made the right decision, because it gives people more variety to see in agriculture.
And in that pond, can you explain or talk about some of the varieties that'll be there?
Right now, that's still up in the air. We have talked about tilapias, we've talked about bass, we've talked about catfish, crappies, bluegills. But the only thing that was tricky about tilapia, it's a tropical fish, and we would have to pull them from the pond at a certain type of certain time of year, whenever the temperature got to a certain level. So we don't know if we wanted to go into that or not. So the species itself is still, we're still waiting that.
Got you. And outside of that, can you talk a little bit more about the grapes? I really want to know, how long does it take to grow grapes and the different varieties that you're going to have?
Well, here I have 8 different varieties. And on the norm, you shouldn't. That's just something that I don't know where that came from. But on the norm, I think it would be best to stick to Kentucky native grapes if you're thinking about starting a vineyard, because you have more disease resistance. You don't have as much other diseases that attack the grapes because it's native to the land. Here I have some European grapes. I have some Niagaras, Cahugas, Steubens, Muscadines, and just a very small portion are native to Kentucky. It takes about actually 3 years for you to get a good cluster on the vines, like full of clusters. You can get clusters your first year, but for it to be actually make a good production of wine takes about 3 years. But it's constantly training them and babying them pretty much in order for them to grow the way you want them to. So I think, if a person's going to start out with it, they should contact, the University of Kentucky, Patsy Wilson, because they have been great in viticulture with helping us start the vineyard that we have. At one time, we had up to 13 grapevines. But over the past couple of years, I've cut some of them back because it's been kind of time consuming. But yeah.
Now I have to ask the question. Everybody knows about this time of the podcast. When I ask this question, it is the Blacker Berry series. I would like to know what berry best represents your farm. I mean, it might be obvious, It might be obvious.
Drum roll.
But,
It's
but
great.
still, let's see. Yeah,
Grapes, yes.
grapes.
Yeah.
Tell us about them. Why do grapes best represent your farm?
I think it best represents because I think it's part of who we are. We go against the odds. We do things a little differently. We don't stick to traditional ways, and it's pretty much, it represents us. I think if we had been producers of, I don't know, something that's common, it's I wouldn't say common. I would think if I had done, like a long, like, I guess the regular garden type setting, I would have been burnt out because I've been in agriculture most of my life. But since I want to stick to farming, I had to find something that was that I would be passionate about, that I would enjoy growing, not, just because I want to sell it and make a profit, but something that I could find fun and interesting, and hopefully everybody else would enjoy as well. Being out in the vines is peaceful. You go out there in the morning sometimes, and you hear birds and you're trimming them back, and then yeah, the whole process itself is interesting because I've also made beer too. But I think grapes takes on another beast in itself because you have to pull them. You send them through this big machine that destems them, and you put them through the bladder press is what it calls, and crushes them. And then at that point, you get to decide what flavor you want your drink to be. Do I want it sweet? Do I want it dry? Do I want it, I don't know, something with a little spice in there? You can tweak it, or you can let it ferment at its own natural setting.
Did you know that CFA is a nonprofit organization that supports family farms, equity work, food access, and policy work across Kentucky? If you're interested in supporting any of this work, please go to cfaky.org and go to our donate tab in order to donate or become a member today. We really appreciate any and all help that we get, and it goes back to helping both farmers and consumers across the Bluegrass State. For more information, go to www.cfaky.org. Once again, that's www.cfaky.org. Thank you. And now back to our show.
How do you determine the sweetness with grapes? Aren't grapes just sweet when you pull them off, or do you have to add?
Each grape is different. Like if you say somebody's drinking a Bordeaux wine, you think, oh, okay, just Bordeaux wine is the area. Yeah, but there's actually a grape. Or if you say a port, there's certain types of grapes with different flavors. All of them are totally different, with a different taste, a different sweetness, a different dryness.
What about those little micro grapes? What are they? What are those?
Micro grapes. What do you mean?
They're like, I've seen them on charcuterie boards, but they look like porcelain berries, but they're like little tiny wine grapes.
Huh? There's so many. Only thing I say that we have something similar to them are Indiana's, but that may not be the grape itself. It's just that they're a tiny berry. But like I said, grapes, people would be surprised at how many different variety of grapes there are and how many different flavors and different tastes that you can get out of a grape. Yes, there's thousands and thousands. Yeah. The ones we have here are predominantly a New York-based grape from Cornell University. And I think some of them are hybrids. Yeah.
What are the Cornell University grapes? What are they called?
Oh, gosh. Well, yeah. They have the ones we have out here are some of them are hybrids of Cahugas. I think those are the main ones, but Cahoogas, people grow them commonly in Kentucky. I mean, it's a common grape. But the origin of the grape, I can't even pronounce the name, it's like Sevyll is the original grape. It was part of that grape combined with another one. And a lot of people in Kentucky, like if they grow European grapes, they're growing it from a rootstock, which a lot of people don't know.
Got you.
So it's almost like, you know how you put two different plants, it's pretty much two plants together. So they take the European grapevine and they add it to a rootstock that would do well in this state. It's called a rootstock 101, and they combine it and produce a grape.
Now, you said the one that you couldn't pronounce. How do you spell it again?
It's Sevyll. I'll have to send you the information to it. Email
That's the one from Cornell.
Well, yeah, they grow tons of variety. A lot of people probably get their grapes from AA Vineyard out of New York, here in the state of Kentucky, and that's where a lot of studying goes on towards culture. Yeah.
Say that one. A lot of study goes from where again?
Yeah. Well, two areas. One of them is if you ever Google Vista, they do a lot of studying with viticulture, and California. And two, the other is in New York. They do a lot of
viticulture.
Yeah, that's just the study of grapes itself. Viticulture, yeah.
Sweet. I was looking for my last question, but I know it already. Because we're running up on the end of the time. Is there anything else that you would like to add for people to learn more about Tonya Smith and Smith Family Farm, or Smith's Farm, excuse me?
What I'd like for people to know is just that, and everybody always say knowledge is power, and it's so true. I just don't want farmers to get disheartened or discouraged. We all have to work together and connect and unite and keep pushing forward. And if we don't get our answer at a local level, don't stop there. Continue to grow. The more knowledge you have, the more resources you can obtain, and different programs you can be involved in to help your farm flourish. Well,
on that note, I'd like to say thank you for showing up. Thank you for coming out, being a part of this interview. Glad to have you here. No problem. And I always say, real change comes from the ground up. Until next time, peace.